if you look at what has been tragically a rather successful effort for Donald Trump to bend the rule of law around his will. I had Andrew Weissmann, of your former colleagues on the Mueller team, at the table talking about the successful effort that Bill Barr undertook to smear and mischaracterize the results of that 23-month investigation. It's clear that when Donald Trump is the person who's been investigated, that without the actual facts and the evidence before the public, Donald Trump will lie about every last facet of it. And in this case, we're here less than 24 hours after the vice presidential debate, where it's like an it's like an SNL skit. I mean, the only reason we covered a J.D. Vance, Tim Walz debate is because Donald Trump sought to have Mike Pence hung by their own supporters. And to the piece of testimony that made Lisa Rubin, as level-headed a colleague as I have, gasp at the prospect of Mike Pence being killed or harmed. Donald Trump's, what Jack Smith found is that Donald Trump's response was, quote, "So what?" What do you think the impact could be of this firsthand witness testimony from Mike Pence and other of the innermost circle from Donald Trump's White House and campaign?
Well, I think for people who already understand the Earth One, Earth Two issue, this surreal nature of going from the vice presidential debate yesterday, where the candidate for vice president on the Republican side basically said, what are you talking about on January 6th? There was no effort to overturn the election and there was a peaceful transfer of power. And then today you have chapter and verse, detailed conversations. And just like the January 6th committee evidence, it is coming from we don't know the exact names all the time, but it is coming from Trump campaign officials, Trump lawyers, and Mike Pence, his own vice president at the time. So it is coming from within the tent. This is not some Democratic hoax. And so you could not have a more sort of stark contrast between rhetoric, empty rhetoric on one hand, and actual facts on the other. In terms of what its ramifications could be, I would think that the people who are saying that they have concerns about Donald Trump, and maybe they're not going to vote for him, but they're thinking about, gee, what does that mean? I should vote for Kamala Harris? Is that something that I should do? I would really encourage people to read the brief and read the evidence and think about the source of the evidence in terms of looking at this election from an apolitical stance. In terms of thinking about it, I think, as Nicole, you and I do, which is what it means for the country in terms of a functioning democracy with the rule of law. Because what you have here is chapter and verse over and over again about an effort, a conspiracy, a criminal conspiracy to thwart the will of the American electorate. There is no more serious crime in American history than that.
And to that point, let me read to you what Mike Pence's testimony has yielded. Again, the historic nature of this investigation is that Jack Smith is the only person known to have interviewed Mike Pence under oath. And when he takes us inside the conversations between Mike Pence and Donald Trump, remember that Mike Pence had as much to gain by remaining in power as Donald Trump did. He simply didn't want to incite violence and destroy the Constitution and lie, frankly, to do so. But he thought about it. He called Dan Quayle and he asked where the limits were. And he sought legal counsel from right-wing conservative legal icon, Judge Michael Luttig. And I want to tell you what he said in the room with Donald Trump. It reads like a scene from Die Hard, like a hostage trying to talk down a hostage taker. In this case, the hostage taker was Donald Trump and the hostage was the United States of America. quote, a call between the defendant, Donald Trump, and Mike Pence on November 7th, the day that media organizations began to project Joe Biden as the winner of the election. Mike Pence, quote, tried to encourage the defendant, quote, as a friend, reminding him, quote, you took a dying political party and you gave it a new lease on life. In a November 11th meeting between the defendant, Mike Pence, campaign staff, and some White House staff, during which Mike Pence asked when most of the lawsuits would be resolved. When does this come to a head, Mike Pence asked, and the campaign staff responded, quote, the week after Thanksgiving. A November 12th meeting among the defendant, Donald Trump, Mike Pence, campaign staff, and some White House staff, during which Mike Pence recalls the, quote, campaign lawyers gave a sober and somewhat pessimistic report on the state of election challenges. A private lunch on November 12th, in which Mike Pence reiterated a face-saving option for Donald Trump, quote, don't concede, but recognize the process is over. Then a private lunch on November 16th, in which Mike Pence tried to encourage Donald Trump to accept the results of the election and run again in 2024, to which Donald Trump responded, quote, I don't know. 2024 is so far off. Harry Litman, I mean, we are in the room with Donald Trump being offered all these off-ramps from his number two, Mike Pence, private conversations between the person who incited the coup. And we have all of this intent and premeditation from the mouth of Mike Pence himself. It's the enormity of it is hard to overstate.
Yeah, it's incredibly scathing, and not just intent and premeditation, but knowledge, all kinds of proof that he knows that this is false. But every time you hear those statements, first, when they're out of the mouth of Pence, that means only through Jack Smith and only through the federal grand jury and subpoena would we know it. This is new stuff from what January 6th had. And then second, when we're toggling back and forth between politics and a trial. But when it comes to trial, anything that anyone says Trump said is going to be admissible under the rules of evidence. So we have not just the most incendiary statements, but statements that we only got because of Jack Smith, are now stand revealed when Trump didn't want them, and will all be admissible at trial, unless, of course, everything about Pence is ruled off the table because of immunity.
Let me keep going with, again, what is new to us as a voting public, as a citizenry. Again, this is Mike Pence, Donald Trump's number two. New information about what happened in a November 23rd phone call between Mike Pence and Donald Trump, in which Donald Trump told Mike Pence that his private attorney was, quote, not optimistic about the election challenges. So by November 23rd, they knew that they were losing or had lost or were going to lose all these challenges. So they knew the wacky stuff being said on Fox News was not going to prevail in court, including in front of some Trump-appointed judges. I believe that's the earliest we've known that they knew all the challenges were going to fail. A December 21st private lunch in which Mike Pence encouraged Donald Trump, quote, not to look at the election as a loss, just an intermission. This was followed later in the day by a private discussion between Pence and Trump in the Oval Office, in which Trump asks Pence, quote, what do you think we should do? Mike Pence said, quote, after we have exhausted every legal process in the courts and Congress, if we still came up short, Donald Trump should, quote, take a bow. Of course, Donald Trump doesn't do that, Lisa Rubin. He incites a deadly insurrection, leaves Mike Pence and his family to run to safety, in which he says, so what, when he learns they're in danger. But